Welcome to the Gaming Junkies Podcast, a podcast about gaming topics and gaming reviews. My name is Greg, and this month's game is Bloodstained Ritual of the Nights. What's going on, everybody? Today, we are at episode 9 talking about Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. Joining me today is Rob and George. How the hell are you guys? It's Friday night. What's going on? You got any plans for this weekend?
Not too much going on myself. Just going to try and relax after an insane week at work. So just looking forward to a chill weekend.
I'm just going to play Dread all weekend and then, put myself in a closet and not talk to anybody. And just play Metroid Dread until I have to work again.
Dude, so I was trying to do the show before that game came out, but it just wasn't kind of working out. And I was like, dude, I wonder if George is going to show up today. It's like he's been talking about this game, and I'm like, I wonder if he's showing up.
We're taking too long with the intro. We need to keep going so I can boot Dread back up.
All right. Well, speaking of that, so today we are going to talk about a game called Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, like I just said. Just a quick background of this game. This game came out in 2019. It is a Metroidvania-style video game. This game was developed by a former Castlevania producer, Koji Iragashi. I hope I didn't screw his name up. So for all you Castlevania fans, this is probably something you're going to really enjoy. So first, what I'd really like to do is ask you guys, how far did you get in this game, and about how many hours did you clock? Go ahead, George, you can start, man. Go ahead.
I think I put in 40 hours, might be a little excessive. Probably like 35 hours to the game.
Okay.
The main campaign took me 10 to 15 hours. I did not 100% it. I got most of the items. Oh no, 100% of the map. I don't know if I 100% of the items. I didn't, because I didn't do all the techniques and stuff. And there's a bunch of synthesizing and everything. So I got a good way there, but I didn't want to do the grindy bits at the end to get the 100% for items. But yeah, I put a good amount of time into it, and I feel like I played a lot more of this game than I did for Shovel Knight.
Yeah. Rob, how about yourself, man?
Well, I actually just checked before we started up, so I didn't put as much time into it. I cleared the main story, cleared Miriam's campaign completely. I did all the endings for her, and I started a little bit on Zangetsu's. But total, I put in about 16 and a half hours between the two of them. I came pretty close to completing the map for Miriam, just through normal playthrough, and nowhere near the amount of time that would need to 100% the items, because you got to do a lot of grinding. But I feel like I got I finally got my fill out of it, because I've had the game since it released, and I just got around to playing it.
Yeah, I gotta say, I probably put close to, I know it was less than 20 hours. When I first beat the game, the first ending, I got a game over, and I was like, damn. So that really kind of pushed me through to complete the rest of the endings. So I'd probably say I'm close to the same page as you, Rob. I got close to the map completion. I got nowhere near weapons and all that stuff. There's no way. I was just happy I beat the last boss. I literally just beat the last guy last week. It took me a lot longer than I thought it was going to, but I actually got through it. So moving right along, what did you guys think of the story and the progression of this game? Did you guys like it? What did you think of it? And the last game that we played was Shovel Knight, so it was a bit different. So overall, what did you guys think of it? George, I can start with you, man. Go ahead.
So I thought the story was okay. It seemed kind of generic a little bit, because it was, you're a character and your friend's over here and you're kind of trying to save them. That was kind of like the general theme of the story. I did like the interactions between the characters, and I did like some of the twists that were in the game. without spoiling anything. There are a couple twists in the game that were not immediately obvious, but if you are used to the kind of twists of the genre, you could see them probably about halfway through the game.
Cool, man. Cool. Yeah. I kind of thought that the story was to me. So I don't play a lot of platformers, right? So maybe my perspective might be a little bit different, but I thought the story kind of was sort of creative because I liked the whole vibe of like killing enemies and getting the shards and like kind of having their powers. So I thought that was a really cool mechanic. Like I like when they tie in the story with the actual mechanics of the game. I know that sounds really dumb, but like
I
I
didn't
go ahead.
I, I didn't view that as story based. I did like that aspect of it. I just didn't view that as story based. I kind of viewed that as more game mechanics based.
Game, yeah, yeah, that's true. That's true. Um, yeah, Rob, what'd you think, man?
So actually, I'm kind of on the side with Greg on the story with the gameplay mechanic. With yeah, it's a gameplay mechanic of collecting shards, but with Miriam's storyline and uh what Dominique talks to you about the kind of early in the game, it's about collecting shards. So I kind of enjoyed that as well. And then also, if you read a lot of the books throughout the game, you'll it's they talk about like the experiment for things like that, and they have to do with shard binding. So I enjoyed that. Um, though at the end of the day, it is semi-generic in my opinion for the genre, but I still enjoyed it. Same with the twists. Like you'll probably see the twists coming, but it doesn't ruin anything. I think at the end of the day, progression wise, I think it was pretty standard fare. Just killing enemies and leveling up, and then as you collect more shards, they get a little bit more powerful. But I feel like for the type of game, I feel like it fits pretty well. So I enjoyed it. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought the progression, it had more of an RPG aspect than what like Shovel Knight did. Um, I like the fact that you could level. I like the fact that you could kill enemies and get their powers. I like the fact that you can upgrade weapons. You can upgrade your shards. So one thing that I really liked about the progression was you could carry all sorts of different weapons. So if you found a weapon you really liked, you could kind of stick to it. And then let's say you like throwing a fireball or you like shooting lightning, you could literally make like a tank that had mage powers. Like I've always liked like a dark knight, a mage that could like a tank that could like throw a fireball or something.
Mm.
Um so that was something I really liked. I guess if we're talking about strictly progression, um the way that you started to get like those extra powers, like the double jump and like the movement where you kind of like stomped at like an angle or stopped straight down. I did like that as well. I thought it was pretty good. It kind of introduced you to one thing, then introduced you to another. As long as you kind of went through it like normally through the story, like as you would. Um, and we were talking about this before we started recording, but you know, some of that like that double jump would open up more of the map and it would open up different parts of this game. So it kind of gave me the feeling of oh man, George, what the hell is that game that we played a year ago? Why am I forgetting it?
Hollow Knight?
Hollow Knight. Yeah. So you know how Hollow Knight you got some powers and it opened up some of the zones and things like that. It kind of gave me that feeling a little bit, which was kind of cool because I haven't experienced something like that for a very long time. Um, but yeah, I mean, I thought the progression, I liked it. I like when there is a leveling aspect, an RPG aspect to it. And
Yeah.
So,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, George.
uh, so I think there is several different aspects of this game, and I think that is super interesting. Like, I like kind of like the sword combat, so I kind of went a sword combat style. I think you can go all sorts of styles.
mhm.
Like you can go a gun style, you can go a casting type style. I'm trying to think. There's something else. You can just power level your way through the game, and not be very good, and just get like out level your bosses where
Mhm.
they only deal one damage to you. So like there's, I feel like that. I feel like the game is designed kind of like it's a Metroidvania, but it's got an RPG leveling system kind of for your character, uh, which is pretty unique I don't think I have seen that combination in a game before. Um, but like as far as the progression, you can use just the shards, and some of the progressions require you to get a shard from a particular enemy. And I remember, Greg, I like texted you and I was like, dude, I have no idea what to do anymore. Like, I got this thing. I did this thing over here. I drained the well. I went down the well. I think I need to go into the water, but I have no effing idea where to go. I've been through the whole castle like 5 times. I swear I've checked every nook and cranny, and like the answer was like, oh, you gotta kill like some random generic fish enemy. Like I'm looking for like a boss door that I've completely missed somewhere in there. It's like, oh no, you gotta kill that like fish and get it shard.
Dude.
And I was like, I would not have figured that out because I was not focusing on shards at all. And I also had this thing in the back of my mind because the story tells you like, hey,
Yes.
if you absorb too many shards, like all of the other shard binders got corrupted, right? So the story does come into play, but not like the main storyline. Kind of like the history pieces come into play, and they're in your mind. So like I haven't played a Castlevania game before, so I was thinking like, do I have to be careful about the number of shards I absorb? Because like in the first area, I just killed everything I saw, and then like every time she like gets a shard, she's like in pain.
Yes.
So it's like, uh, this girl's been stabbed like 50 times by the time I got to the front door of this castle. This is probably not good. So like I was like,
Yeah,
do
go
I
ahead.
need to be worried about this? So like as I got through the middle of the game, I was like, I'm gonna stop like absorbing as many shards as I possibly can. And then like I couldn't get into the area because I made that like mental decision in my head, and then I had to look it up.
Well, dude, they
There aren't that many games where I need to look up an answer to something.
yeah, so they tell you so many times like, "Hey, don't absorb too many shards. Don't do that," and you're sitting there like, I thought the same thing. I'm like, "Dude, like do I sell these?" Cuz like Dominique even is like, "Hey, you should sell these," cuz I was broke like half the game. Just completely broke cuz I never sold my shards. And then it wasn't until like 70% of the game I'm like, "I'm selling these damn things. I have so many of these things." And then it started to like, "Oh, I have cash now." But I thought the same thing. Like this game is going to end and I'm gonna get a game over and I'm gonna get stuck in and then eventually I just like screw it, I don't care. Um but
Well,
that's gonna lead me into something further on down the line, but I'll save it. But anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, George. Go ahead, man.
all right, you're good. I don't know. Like as far as gameplay goes and progression, there were a lot of intricacies and working parts between like the money and the items and the drops from the enemies. That all worked really good. And if you're into that, like, I've talked about this before. If you're in that like Monster Hunter type style, like, oh, I want to like synthesize this new thing because it's going to be higher attack power
Mm-hmm.
and it'll also shield me from fire and this boss does fire damage. Like all of that stuff is definitely doable and buildable for your character if you want to spend the time in the synthesis menu. Uh, or the materials crafting menu, I guess. Uh, I don't love doing that, so I didn't spend that much time in there until like I realized, oh, in order to complete the item list, I need to actually dirtle with this thing, and then I spent some time in there, and then I also was like, oh, I actually have to buy like pieces over here to craft these things, and buying things costs money, and nothing drops money. Like
Yeah.
money is like a rare commodity in that game. So I was like, okay, I'll sell all my shards. I'll get the discount card from the shop for like 100K, and it saves you 10% on like items. It was not worth it. But yeah, I mean, I think for the Steam requirement, the item card is 1% of like your item completions or something like that, so you have to buy it.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I had sold my shards to do it, and I didn't realize that selling my shards decreases my shard power until after I did it, and then I couldn't get it back, and I was like, oh my god. But like that's kind of cool though, because
Yeah.
like the gold, the shards, and the power for your shards kind of all work in like a circle together. So like you can keep all your shards and your shard abilities will be more powerful, but you're never gonna have any money.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can get a whole bunch of money and kind of level up your equipment and stuff, and then use your equipment instead of your shards. It really allows for like some flexibility in your progression and your gameplay. That I do really like that aspect of it, even if I find certain pieces of it to be pretty annoying.
Yeah, I really liked. So I it's hit or miss with crafting with me. If it's not too complicated and it's not too easy, it's got to be like that sweet little perfect spot. And typically, it's why I like cooking in games. It sounds really dumb. I like cooking in real life, so maybe that's why. But this game even has cooking, and you can even like grow like rice and stuff too. So I feel like this game's got so much. I mean, I I guess I was pretty average when it came to upgrading things. My strategy was more or less collect all my shards, grab a couple favorites, and then sell the rest because some of them are just utter crap, in my opinion. So I don't know, Rob, how much did you utilize the systems that they gave us for progression in this game? Would you say?
You mean what do you mean the utter crap? So you sell them? What if you want them? What if you need them?
Oh, it's
Um, so I'm a kind of a pack rat in games that have like that don't limit your inventory or anything like that. So I never sold a single shard.
Mm.
Um, I so part of something that is in this that's pretty common within Castlevania itself is so George, you were commenting on like money being a rarer commodity. Um, I pretty much always get money from the like any of the lights or the torches, the sconces that you can break, and I spent almost all of my game jumping around destroying every sconce that I could. So I had a fair bit of money, but I also didn't spend a lot of money. But I enjoyed the systems. I started getting into the like weapon crafting and the cooking about halfway through the game, maybe even a little bit later. I don't think I ate any food until like 7 or 8 hours in of my 15-hour playthrough. Because I didn't realize initially that eating the food grants you permanent stat bonuses.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's when I started like realizing, oh, I need money to buy stuff over here so I can cook stuff over here so I can get
Yep.
permanent stat boosts.
Yeah,
And then
and
that's when I started running out of money.
that's also the same spot that I started running out of money when I was like, okay, well, I want to start getting all of these stat boosts. So I did start like I got into the different systems. Another thing that I found interesting that like I don't know why I didn't realize it before. I didn't realize food healed you
Yeah.
until
Uh,
the literal last two bosses.
I have a story about that.
Um, I'll let you get to that in a second. But yeah, for the other systems, like I did start upgrading weapons like super early on. When you find out about like the synthesizing and you can do the 8, 16, 32-bit coin weapons, I got like one of the 8-bit coin weapons, the lightsaber sword, because I was absolutely in love with that. But then I didn't start synthesizing anything until way later. I was just using what I found. And then when I figured out what weapon type I wanted to use, I would just build the most powerful of that type that I can use at that time. Um, so I did enjoy them. Yeah, I found them pretty standard fare. One thing that did annoy me, George, you kind of mentioned it. So if you need to like make food, you've got to go to the store to buy all this stuff, and you're constantly going back and forth between three different screens. That
Or you need fucking beef from the one damn cow in the the garden area who spawns it at a 3% rate.
Did you look that up?
It's in the menu. So I
Oh, is
found
it? Oh, no shit.
so the menu tells you its drop rate once it drops. So like I was like, I want to cook this. So I looked up like what drops it, and I was like, oh, I would have never found this. It drops at a 3% rate, and I've killed this guy like 4 times as I've gone through the map. Like he didn't drop
Oh,
it any of those times, so I would
man.
have not have known. But
Mhm.
like you can look at the enemy in like the demon compendium, and the enemy will tell you, hey, it drops 4 items. 2 of them are question marks. Guess you should farm this enemy until it drops all its stuff so you knows what it drops. Uh, when I finally started getting into like the synthesis and the cooking piece, then I was like, oh, I gotta do this because I want to cook all the food and I want to get all the stat boosts. Uh,
Put a list in front of George, and you got him hooked. That's all you need, man. You got him
Well, so
hooked.
I want that 100%. So I got to fill out all the question mark boxes, and I got to like this drop rate over here is 0.02, and it only comes from one enemy that like spawns 20% of the time. Good luck. And grind that. I would grind that shit for hours because I need that. I need that item completion.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. Well, and
it's not fun. I just have a problem.
yeah. Well, I think so. That's like again, it's something I love and I hate. It's something that gives you the freedom to really customize your character and then have all these little systems that just kind of make sense, and you can go and farm enemies if you want and level up and also get stuff to make food and upgrade your weapon. So it's kind of like you're killing a bunch of birds with one stone if you think about it. And I kind of really like that aspect, but of course it's time consuming, and not all of us, of course, having full-time jobs and families and things like that. You can't really sit there for 6 hours and kill the same mob and same 3 mobs or whatever. But if you want, you can, and you have that freedom, and that's what's awesome. I think that's what's really awesome about this game.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think there are a lot of cool systems in this game, and that kind of brings. Go ahead, George.
I like you said, I think there's a lot of cool systems. There's a lot of hidden depth. Like, I guess you could approach this like a Metroidvania style game where you're going in and you're fighting bosses, right? And you're just beating enemies, and you could never touch the synthesis stuff, and you would be fine. But if you want to get into the quest lines and get the rewards for the quest lines and do the shard farming and this thing over here, if you want to make your character kind of like OP, like we didn't even talk about techniques. Like I
No.
don't think any of us even did the techniques. But there's a whole bunch of like you can master the technique of this weapon to get this ability that once you master it, it will keep with you the entire way through the game. There's a lot of those type of things. Uh, and yeah, I mean the techniques are an entirely different way to play. Like you could do base sword bash up the opponent. You can do spells bash up the opponent. You can do techniques bash up the opponent. You could do just out level the opponent. Like there's many different ways to play this game. But when you first get it and probably do your first playthrough, you're like, I'm just gonna press the A button until this guy dies.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of reminded me a little bit like back in the day when I played Mortal Kombat against my buddies, right? It's like down, forward, back, like those button combinations of in pertaining to what weapon you would use. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I literally use maybe like 3 weapons. I use like the great sword, the sword, and like the polearm or the spear. Those are like my weapons of choice. I fooled around with other weapons, but I was like, nope, no, I don't. No, these are for me. Um, so, but yeah, and what was really cool, some of the exploration aspects, I guess, is more towards like kind of level design, but like all those books you could read from the bookshelves. Sometimes you get some lore, and then sometimes they would be like, "Hey, are you using a sword? You can do this combination with this sword." Which was pretty cool too. So,
Yeah.
oh, go ahead.
I was going to say on the book specifically, I thought it was interesting that some of the techniques only worked for specific weapons. It wasn't like, oh, this technique will work with all daggers. Some of them would, but some of them would only work with certain daggers. So I thought that was a very interesting idea behind that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
oh, go ahead, George. Sorry.
yeah. I like when you play Zangetsu's campaign, right? And you kind of take away from like Miriam's ability to kind of do anything. Zangetsu has like techniques built into him, and that's the only way you can play him. Like he doesn't have like the magic abilities. He will level up, right? But he doesn't have like the I don't think he changes his weapon like your katana all the way through. So he's all techniques. And I thought that was one of the cooler parts of playing Zangetsu's campaign was like he has what he has and he's not like he'll level up and get better, but he's not going to change like his stuff. Like you have to learn these techniques if you want to succeed. And some of them give you iframes, which is not a thing Miriam has naturally. Uh, and that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
Like Miriam, I think can learn the iframe moves through her techniques, but
yeah.
like I don't like it's a lot of work, and I don't want to do it. And it didn't sound like any of us wanted to play him that way either. But like when you played Sangetsu's campaign, you're like, oh, He can do the fire pillar thing and like float halfway across the room and be invincible during that whole thing. That's pretty sick. That would have come in real handy against this boss that hits the entire room and does a whole bunch of damage to me.
Yeah, he did have some kick-ass abilities. Especially when you run into him with Miriam and you're fighting him, he does pull off some like crazy shit. I'm just like, damn, can I get that? Like, is that a shard? Like, how do you do that? Like, it's crazy. Um, so yeah, I kind of want to move on to a little bit of progression, but also the map design. So I kind of touched on this. So like throughout the game, depending on obviously how you play, but sometimes you'll open up certain things like the double jump and like the stop, like the things where you could essentially use a power and you like reflect off certain objects in the wall, which kind of like teleport you and things like that. I really liked that. I thought that was really cool. What did you guys think of the kind of the flow of the map design and how each I guess you want to call them zones? Is that appropriate? Because you're kind of all in like one area, kind of a giant castle, I guess. So what do you guys think of the zones?
George, if you want to lead first.
Sure. I liked the different sections of the castle. I thought the zones were pretty cool. I thought some of the progression items were un, not underutilized throughout the game. Like I think the first major boss you fight is this like kind of hand thing that gives you the ability to
Mm,
like grab things and move them all around. I think you use that ability like maybe 3 times throughout the game, like maybe four.
yeah.
Like you get that like maybe an hour into the game, and then like throughout the rest of the game you use it like 3 or 4 times. I think that could have been better utilized. And the second big one you get is the dash thing you were talking about. I think that's used again like 3 or 4 times. So like I feel like in the later sections of the castle, things could have been like pretty janky with some of the abilities you get. I just feel like they were used as a stopping point to be like, okay, you can't progress here until you get that piece. Okay, you got that piece. Now you can progress through this spot, and that now you can forget you ever had it.
It's a barrier to entry, basically.
Yeah. So that's one of the things I think could have been improved on a little bit with those like upgrades. Uh, but I mean, other than that, I liked the areas, the castle. I liked the enemies. They did do the typical like reskin of a weaker enemy to a different color, and now it's a stronger enemy throughout the areas.
Hmm.
Um, I did like the optional like boss fight of each area. I thought those were really cool. Like you have these like keys that you'll find, late game, and you can go into like the garden area is one of the first areas you get to, and it has like a locked door that is locked throughout most of the campaign. When you finally get the key, you can go in there, and there's like an extra boss. And those bosses were like pretty strong. I wasn't expecting them to like wreck me the first time I went in there. They were cool. I really liked the background, I think, for each of the areas. Those
Mm.
kept me pretty entertained. They weren't bland or generic, I didn't feel like. Like, even though I felt the storyline was like, hey, you're trying to save your best friend, and no, some things are happening, the castle itself was pretty cool. The backgrounds were neat. Like, that whole piece kept me entertained.
Can I just interrupt for 1 second? When I first saw the giant cat, I was like, where the I'm like, what the hell? Like the cat's just like it's just chilling there. I'm like,
I thought
dude,
it was
never
friendly. It
I
killed
never
me.
I was like, I never saw a freaking ginormous cat in a game. Like it was just so weird. I was like, what the fuck? Like what am I playing? And then I realized I'm like, dude, well they're demons. They're like spawning demons from like world. Well, I don't know, dude. I was like, okay. So I could definitely go with you on the whole uniqueness cuz you go into these zones, you're just like, huh, this is entirely different. It's got its own theme and like the enemies, they do reskin them, but some of them are just like wild. They're just like
The first
wild.
time that cat you're talking about, the first time I saw it, I was like, "Oh, this is like a merchant or something in the middle of the map." So I walked up to him. I was low health from like some
Oh, no.
random freaking encounter that was like that like really messed me up, but I like survived it. I walked in this room, this cat's sitting here. I'm like, oh, let me talk to the cat. Maybe I can buy a health potion or something from him. And then he just like smacks me and I die. I'm like, you bitch.
So an interesting note about the different cats, and there's a few different cats. I think there is a few different dogs as well.
Mhm.
So this game initially has a little bit of a history for this. This game was on Kickstarter, and some of the backer goals were like you get your pets into the game.
Oh man.
So that's why they have like random like real world looking cats and dogs in this game with like skeletons and zombies.
I
Oh
mean, I
shit.
just wanted to pet the cat, and then the cat smacked me. It wasn't fair.
I know, dude. When I had to kill those things, like I'm a big animal lover, so I'm like, dude, I gotta kill those. So I usually would just avoid them, but sometimes I would kill them, just like, oh, dude, I don't want to kill. I did not want to kill them.
And then you realized you need to kill them for their little pieces they drop to synthesize things.
Rob, what did you think, man?
So, I mean, overall, I enjoyed the different the different zone designs. I felt that a lot of the progression was kind of standard, but I do really agree with George that a lot of the exploration type shards that you get are pretty much they can be pretty like not impactful at all. Very much, especially that first one that you get with the giant hand to move stuff around. Some of them can be used a little bit more. So like the first dash quote unquote ability that lets you reflect off of surfaces, you can use that to get to certain areas. Like you can utilize that before you get the double jump to get to certain areas, for instance, like so you can access things different ways. I enjoyed that. Um, and then the like sub bosses that you were mentioning that you get the keys later on, and I really enjoyed those because they had a lot of nods in there. So the one boss you were mentioning behind the locked door in the garden, like the Revenant, that enemy is a direct throwback to the Belmonts. I think Simon Belmont from the Castlevania games. He has the same kind of moveset as that. Um, there's a not quite hidden, but there's an optional boss for Iga himself, and he's like a Dracula fight in one of the previous Castlevania games.
He took
Um,
me a day and a half to
yeah,
figure out and beat. He was a pain in the neck.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, overall, I think the level design worked well enough for itself. Um, Talking about the level design, I'll kind of also visit that shard topic that George you were talking about. That it with the water, finding the shard that like helps you swim
Yep.
was the most frustrating thing in the game for me. Um, I did look it up too, because I felt like nowhere else. That was the only time where you were you had a progression locked behind a normal enemy's shard spawn. Um, and I do understand that they kind of showed it to you, but I just didn't put two and two together. I felt that was kind of frustrating when I figured out, oh yeah, I have to farm this enemy specifically. So
I
that
mean, they didn't though. They like said it. All these other big like things came from bosses, right? And then all of a sudden they're just like, oh, by the way, have fun. Like,
yeah, like
eh.
the closest thing is like, oh, I see this enemy can move through the water. Maybe if I kill it enough, that's the shard I'll get. But like they never do that at any other point in time.
And
You
that was the other thing though. Like I killed that enemy, that particular enemy. I killed him up like a bunch of times, and his shard didn't spawn for me like randomly as I was going through the map, and his shard didn't spawn for me. So like when I went through the shards to find like movement shards and stuff, it wasn't there, and I had no idea which enemies I had shards from. Because like you're not that's not something you're keeping track of as you're going through the game. Like, oh, I've got the shard from the rat and the zombie and the skeleton, but I didn't get it from the demon over here and this like
yeah, yeah. So overall, I felt the level design was pretty solid. It fits the bill. I like yeah some frustrations with that water movement ability, and then I was actually doing some like local stream to some friends on Discord as I was playing it, and specifically that area when I got the water movement, a few people agreed with me. that is probably the worst swimming
Oh God.
in a game.
Oh God, dude. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, so I did enjoy it. A few pain points, but nothing too crazy.
Yeah. For me, I had to look it up as well. My first thought though, so when I was in the water, I was like, dude, I guarantee you, I got to be in this water. Like, there's something I gotta do. So you know how you could like stomp down, like you jumped
Hmm.
up and I kept trying to stomp down and like go underneath a rock to force myself to stay underwater. I just couldn't, and I was like, I can't do this. So I finally looked it up, and yeah, I was just killing the enemy. And I just started thinking about this, like if you didn't know this, right, and you didn't look it up because you don't want to look it up to ruin an experience or whatever, whatever. What happens if you got that shard, didn't realize, and just you kept selling it because you're like, I'm never going to use this? You would never like never progress. So I agree. I think there should have been maybe a little bit of something, but I don't know. Sometimes I also think that maybe I'm being too spoiled and I need that like little GPS. I need that little marker to tell me where to go. Um,
Well, that's one of the things I thought was real interesting about this game. Like the items actually had some impact in like your movement and your map interactions, right? Like that shard was annoying, but that wasn't the only piece in the game that was like this is kind of coming up to that one story I have about particular things at the top of the topic. Uh, like there's equipment that also has like this equipment is completely immune to fire or immune to ice or immune to this thing or that thing. And when we had dealt with the shard thing, right? And I was like, okay, I have to be paying attention to these shards, but it's not just the shards; it's the weapons and the armor too.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
There's another area later on in the game, and this is where my cooking story comes into play. I went through all the shards. I was like, I gotta find a shard that is immune to spikes. Like, I have to find one. I went through all my shards. There was nothing that was immune to spikes. I was like, oh, okay. But I just haven't found it yet. And I got so frustrated running through the map, I cooked 30 meals. And I was like, there's only one spot I haven't been. It's got to be through this way. And I forced myself through this spiked hallway. I just, like, you have to imagine Miriam just walking down this hallway, getting knocked back. And then I realized if I turned around just before she got knocked back, she'd get knocked back the opposite way. So I was like, all right, I'll walk forward just before I get knocked back. I'll turn around. She'll get knocked back. I got through the whole round of spikes. I ate like 5 or 6 meals, right? I do my thing. I climb up to the next. There's another row of spikes, and it's the only other time in the game it uses the stupid hand thing. It's so like I'm walking through the spikes. I turn around. She gets hit backward. I grab the hand thing. I move it like a half an inch. I get hit backwards. I move back up. I grab the hand thing. I move it back up. The spikes do a ton of damage. You just imagine your Miriam walking through like a spiked hallway while eating like 30 plates of spaghetti and trying to move a giant boulder. Uh, I got through it. I got to the top. I got to the safe point, and I was like, I'm gonna figure out how to do that stupid part. Went to the internet, looked it up, went to my inventory, went, oh, I have that piece of equipment. It it didn't effing know. So instead, I ate 30 plates of spaghetti.
Yeah. So yeah, I when you told me that because you were texting me, I was like dying. I was like, oh my God, because I looked this shit up because as soon as you get that power, that basically reverts and you start walking on the ceilings essentially, which I thought was actually really fucking cool because they designed this whole game so you could b- essentially do that, and I thought that was pretty creative. In my mind, they had to think of like the actual ceiling to the floor and make sure it made sense for the most part. Um, but yeah, dude, I was dying when you said that because I had to look so much stuff up in this game because maybe I'm just spoiled and I've been playing so many games now that really hold your hand that I was just like, what am I supposed to do? What am I
So
supposed to do?
I got so frustrated with the water part because like there was just no way to progress without like knowing which shard you needed, right? But like this part, I was like, all right, it's just HP, and HP is replenishable as long as I hit the pause button. So I'm not looking this damn thing up. I'm doing it. Yeah, 30 plates. When I saw the the boulder thing that you had to move down the hallway, like the trap chest or whatever. I
Yeah.
was like, oh, this is gonna be a pain in the neck. Because the first time I went up there, I got through that hallway and I only had like 5 plates of spaghetti or something. And I got through the hallway, I was like, all right, we're good. And then I got to the next one, I was like, oh no, we are not good.
Well, that's pretty damn creative, I gotta say. I would have never really even thought of doing that.
Well, like, I mean, HP is a replenishable resource for the most part, as long as you have enough potions.
Yeah,
But like swimming through water, there's nothing you can do about that.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. Definitely, you kind of brought something up too, with this level design and things like that. There's the chests. I know it sounds really simple, but just having like treasure boxes, and it seemed like some of them were like dailies. So like I think the blue ones you could open per day or per session. I didn't quite understand that because they're
I think it's
definitely
per save point.
okay, because I know there's like time in the game because when you talk to certain NPCs, they're like, "Oh, good morning" or "good night" or having it whatever. So I don't know if there was some kind of time, but anyway, yeah, that I'm glad you cleared that up for me. Um, but yeah, I always kind of like the exploration. If you see a chest, you're like, "Oh, how do I get there?" It kind of takes you away from what you're doing and puts you on track to do something else. And I always enjoy that when games do that as well. So I thought that was a pretty cool aspect of, I guess, it's kind of progression, but also level design as well. So,
The chests were neat. I didn't pick this up at first, but the blue chests, like you were talking about, those daily spawns, they were all like food or like crafting materials that like you could not get in any other place, right? And then the green ones were like one-time opening things, I think, that you got
hmm
like some like perk or something like that. And then the red ones were all like, major items.
yeah,
But the blue ones, the what spawns in those blue ones is always what spawns in those blue ones. So like if you wanted like I think you were talking about like the rice seeds earlier and all that stuff, that will always spawn in the blue chest on the ship when you start.
yeah, yeah. That also reminds me of the what was that? The HPs and the ammos and stuff that you
Hmm.
could find as well.
Yep.
That was also really cool. So I mean, this game, if you think about it, it's got so much. It's got a lot of exploration. It's got a lot of like systems that could really utilize for your character. It's just overall is a pretty cool game. Now what I want to do is like my favorite part also is just basically in any game is usually a boss fight. And there are a lot of bosses in this game. So I wanted to ask you guys about the experience with some of the bosses you've had. Did you have any favorites? Did you have any that you just didn't ever want to fight ever again? What was your opinion on all that?
Rob, why don't you start this one off?
Gotcha, yeah. So, the bosses for me, I'll be honest, I felt like a lot of them were kind of forgettable. Their design, I liked their design, but the actual fights themselves, I wasn't a huge fan of all of them, really. Um, Interestingly enough, the Zangetsu boss fights were probably some of the bigger ones for me. I felt like those were like some skill checkpoints initially. Um, and then just to avoid any kind of spoilers, I had some difficulties with the last boss fights. But I just had to kind of change the way I was playing, and then I was able to take care of them. There's one boss that had I think it was the giant puppet dude almost, Valifar, I think he was.
Mm-hmm.
He like takes your money. I had to go spend money to be able to circumvent that because he takes all of your money. And when I was fighting him, I had like 36,000.
Oh,
So yeah.
oh,
um, but yeah, so I thought that there were some of them that had really interesting designs. But overall, honestly, I think my favorite boss was. Uh, I don't think it's really a spoiler that you end up fighting him. So Alfred was probably my favorite boss fight.
okay, yeah, yeah.
I just like the different style, all of his different styles, all the different stuff, and I also liked the arena. His arena, I thought was a nice change of pace. It kind of done with an earlier boss with that the two-headed thing, but I really liked Alfred's arena.
Yeah, that was
I 100% agree with you there. I thought the two-headed boss and the arena for You just said his name, and I forget his
Alfred.
name. Yeah, Alfred. I thought those were the two best boss fights in the game. Most unique, definitely.
Hmm.
Yeah, when I saw those two giant heads, I'm like, what am I gonna do? It's like, what am I like? What, do I kill one head and then kill the other? Like, I was so kind of thrown off. Um, I gotta say I think her name was Bloodless. She
Hmm.
actually was probably the second most difficult boss for me. I don't know why. I don't know what it is. And I think also what really threw me off and what gave me a really big headache about the bosses is that you don't see their health pool. You have
Yeah.
no idea if you're getting close to killing them, if you're even halfway. So at one point of a lot of these fights, I'm just like a madman. I'm like, I don't care how much damage I'm taking. I got the potions. I'm just going crazy, right? Because I'm like, they gotta be dead soon. They gotta be dead soon. And then I find out like, nah, and I died. And it's she for some reason though, she just took me forever. I don't know why. I don't know if it's because I thought I was gonna beat her soon, and then she just sucked all the blood. And I don't know if there was like, hey, can I stun her? Can I do something to stop this? I had no idea, but eventually I had like maybe 3 hit points, and I was like kind of squatting in a really awkward, like right next to her, on top of her, squatting and just hitting her repeatedly, and she just died. And I'm like, yes. It's like I never want to fight her again ever. Like it took me
See,
over a half hour, I think.
she was my third favorite, and there was a hot minute where I was fighting her, and I kept getting her to the point where she would regen, and then I was like, is she gonna regen? Like, just keep doing this?
That's
Like, am I even supposed to be fighting this boss right now? Is there like something I'm supposed to like hit her with to prevent
yes.
that from happening? Because that was after I think, or no, it was before the Aqua Shard. But like, I was getting to the point where like some of these bosses were like, okay, I think I might have to do something special like to this boss in order to like actually beat it. And then like sometimes they would die, and I was like, oh, I guess I don't have to. But this one was the first one where I was like, it's a vampire and it's sucking up blood, and every time I hit it, it puts blood on the walls, and she's gonna keep doing this. And I'm in a vicious cycle, and I need to break this vicious cycle. And I was 100% overthinking it, but I did. This game had me doing that in a lot of places. Like, am I absorbing too many shards? Is this vampire lady? Do I need to break her cycle of sucking up blood? Like, is there a boss that I haven't found yet that I need this shard for? Like, it had me doing that a lot. And I don't usually overthink games, but this game had me doing it, which was a nice change of pace.
Yeah, yeah. One thing that was really shocking is, and I think we kind of did a little bit of a spoiler. There are different endings for this. So, when I got to the first ending and I beat, the boss, I was like, dude, that was way too easy. I was like, that was like way too easy. And then of course you get the screen, and then you're like, okay, duh. So, but I kind of was expecting this guy to just be really, really difficult no matter what. You know what I mean? So that was a little. It kind of threw me off, but maybe that's the whole mechanic of the game. Um, the rest of the bosses, besides the last boss, at least the last boss for the story, um, I thought were pretty easy once you figure out their pattern, or maybe if you use a different weapon. And that's also what I really liked about this game is that, like Rob, you were kind of saying, you kind of just changed your play style a little bit, and you were able to get through it. And just having that ability, that freedom, just really makes it for me. Like honestly, really makes it for me. Um, did anybody see the throwback to Shovel Knight in this game?
Yes.
Yes.
I
Yeah,
was
they
like,
had a Shovel Knight enemy. It was fantastic.
he's,
Well,
he,
they literally had a shard that was summon Shovel Knight.
yeah, dude, it was crazy. I kept the shovel. I did not sell it. So as a weapon, you could use a shovel. And I was like, I got to keep the shovel. I'm not selling it. I just have to. But I thought that was cool. Is this guy's like a shovel? He's throwing dirt at you and stuff like that. It's really funny. Um, trying to think of anything else besides the bosses. And I sort of talked about the enemies, the cats and the dogs. Um, is there anything else that kind of stuck out to you guys when it came to enemies and bosses or anything like that?
Mm, I mean, George kind of talked about like how they ended up using a lot of reskins for enemies. I think that's um It's been a while, honestly, since I played a Castlevania game. I played mostly the 2D Castlevania games. I believe that was a common thing in that. But um, I did like how, even though they did reskin a lot of enemies, they still had some unique enemies for the different areas, like having the assassins and the ninjas in certain areas, and then having like the water horse, but also having land horses. Like I thought it was interesting, but nothing really. Yeah, I think I like that how they customized them for different areas, but that was a good touch. But otherwise, I feel like it was pretty standard Castlevania style enemies with the skeletons and the floating and the bats, the rats, all that good stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
I thought the normal enemies were pretty standard fare for the most part. Like they met the genre expectations. Uh, and I thought the bosses were pretty good in like the whole like, oh, I have to, be careful of these certain moves. Like let me roll it back a bit. When you're going through the game, like there's definitely like skill check parts. Like the first Zangetsu fight is a big skill check part where you're like, oh, this is a real fight, and I gotta figure. Like I can't just. I kind of talked about in Shovel Knight how you can kind of walk up to a boss sometimes and just wail on him as he wails on you, and sometimes you'll just win.
Yeah.
That is not a thing in this game, and it took me. I felt like I could do that up until the Zangetsu fight, and then I was like, oh, I actually have to learn how this boss fights. Okay, all right,
Mm-hmm.
let me start doing that. Like I feel like that's how I play games. I go through a game till I get to a point where like my mind actually has to work, and Shovel Knight never got me to that point where I really had to think about it. Maybe some of like the challenge mode stuff, but not like the actual generic campaign. Once I got to the Zangetsu fight, I was like, oh, okay, I actually got to like respond to some of the things he's doing. I can't just beat the crap out of him until he dies. Like he's gonna mess me up first. Uh, and I guess I could have gone back and like leveled up like 20 levels, and then that wouldn't have been a thing. Like then I probably could have done it, but that's a little grindy.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I felt like that was an excellent way the bosses were going up until you get the invert ability. And then the invert ability, I think, breaks a lot of the late game bosses because they're all gravity bound to the floor, and you can gravity bind yourself to the ceiling, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of their stuff is like ground based. Like they'll do some jumps here and there, so you can't like completely ignore them, but for the most part, like their attacks and stuff are ground based, and they don't really hit you, and you can just jump up with them and wail on them. I did that for some of the secret bosses, like the Warhorse fight, the Reverend fight you were talking about, the
Mm-hmm.
Richter or the Simon one.
Yeah.
He was wrecking me, and then I was like, all right, I'm going to use my invert shard and see what happens, and then like he couldn't do anything. So some of the later game like bosses can be, I don't know if I'd call it cheese because they give you the ability, but it definitely makes the fight. It turns the fight in your favor because they don't their AI doesn't adapt to the flipped
Mm-hmm.
screen.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I used when you get the double jump and then you can like kind of or not kite, what is it? Like dive down, dive at an angle.
mhm.
Once I got that ability or that movement style, I felt like the game became a bit easier with some of the bosses. Because it kind of gave you a method of moving to like half of like the zone or half of the arena that you're fighting in very quickly. And it was a lot easier to dodge things, so I don't know if that was the point or if it was just something I was doing. But I felt like when I was doing it so much, and like you can hit their head and then you get another jump and then you can stomp right next to them to get behind them so you can avoid spells. I thought that kind of made things a bit easier.
Yeah, it didn't lock you into like, oh, my sword has hit you, and now it is still extending, and now it will come back to me, and now I can move.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think overall this game had a lot of things you could do, a lot of customizations. The zones were pretty good. Bosses were pretty good in my opinion. Um I'm not sure how much you guys paid for this game, but I paid, I think it was like $40 for this game. And
That sounds right.
yeah, I got it on my PS5. So I mean, it really didn't matter. I think it was really for PS4, but whatever. Um, and to me personally, would I recommend this game? I definitely think if you're into platformers, and I guess $40, huh? I don't know, man. I think $40 nowadays is pretty. It's on the cheaper side for games. I think for the amount of content you can do. So if you really enjoyed like this game, you could do all the harder content that's offered and the Zengetsu story. I think it would be worth it content wise. But again, I'm not a huge platformer, so to me, $40 is a little much for the game. But again, if I'm gonna look at it from a logical standpoint, I think it's probably worth it. What do you guys think?
Um, as I kind of mentioned earlier, I was in the unique boat that I've had the game because I got it on Kickstarter. But I was waiting for years, but I paid $28 for the game. That was initially. I don't remember. I got it on Steam as well. I got it on the computer as well. I don't remember what I paid for it the second time around, but paid $28 for it on Switch. I hate the Switch port very much, but a Castlevania game because that's basically what this is. Metroidvania, or as I call them, sprawlers now. It's a very solid entry to that, leaning more on the Castlevania side of things than the Metroid side of things. I think it's a pretty fantastic game. Even if I had to pay $40 for it, just because I'm a fan of the genre, I'd still recommend it. I think it's a really solid entry. And really takes the classic aspect of the more classic 2D Castlevania games and brings a lot of it into the more modern side of things as well. So I honestly think it's worth the money, but it's very easy to get on sale at this point too.
Yeah, yeah. George, how about you, man?
I thought 40 was a little too much for the game, but I made the mistake with Hollow Knight where I was like, I'm going to wait for this. Because we had talked about, like, or not, yeah, we had, not Hollow Knight, Shovel Knight.
Shovel Knight,
We had
yes.
talked about, like, Shovel Knight, and we talked about, like, a month in advance, and it went off sale the day that we talked about doing it. And I was like, I, I'll wait for it to come back. And that was a mistake in my Shovel Knight thing because, like, it never came back on sale. And then, like, a week and a half before we were going to do the video, I was like, "Oh, I got to play this damn game." Uh, so I bought it full price, and I wasn't going to make that mistake with this one. So like when we talked about doing it, I was like, "All right, I'm going to buy it." I think so. I bought it for the Switch, and I don't think it's worth $40 on the Switch.
Okay.
I think for a computer or a more advanced console, it would be fine. But the Switch had loading problems and not overheating problems, but there were parts of the game where it would slow down, and
Mm.
they weren't like it was to the point where it was getting annoying. Like moving through a room probably should be pretty how was your experience moving through rooms? Did you get like a loading screen for like a little bit, or was it
No,
just like
it
kind of like snap
was
you're
it
there?
was it was seamless.
Yeah,
Um,
Yeah.
it was pretty seamless. But I know exactly what you're talking about.
So yeah, the Switch had some issues with that. So for the Switch, I would say no. For a different console that's a little more powerful, it probably would have been fine. But I ran into some of those frustrations as I was playing through the game. But I think, like I said earlier, the game's really deep in its depth, or it's really short in its story. You can kind of choose your mode there. Um, there are a bunch of fun bosses. The OD fight is nuts. He's an optional boss at the end of the game if you 100% or 99 plus percent the map. Um, but yeah, I enjoyed the game, and I feel like there was another point there I wanted to make, and I forget what it is now. Yeah, pass on it.
It's gone
But
forever.
yeah, sometimes like you have those lined up, and then you start talking about one, and the other one just goes, ah, no.
yes.
Uh, But yeah, I thought for the Switch I wouldn't pay 40 for it. For a different console, probably worth it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean nowadays I did a Google search real quick. You could probably get a used copy for less than $20. I mean, if the GameStop or wherever you live, you could probably find something used, even on Amazon. So if you go down that route, if you don't want to spend the 40, you could you could probably find it used. Um,
If you would get it on sale for $30 or anything less than that, I think it would be worth it.
yeah, yeah. I kind of feel like 40 is a little steep, but when I really think about it, when I really think about everything you could do, and if you're gonna like max out this game entirely, I think okay, maybe 40 is okay. But yeah, so now it's time to rate the game out of 10. So last time we did a show on Shovel Knight, I think we were all kind of similar at around sevens. So out of 10, what would you guys rate this game? George, you
Uh,
can, or go ahead,
no,
Rob. Sorry, man.
no, I was gonna say, Georgia, if you can go first for this one.
Oof. Uh, so I think my rating's going to be low for this, lower than it should have been, but I think some of that problem is going to be the loading times causing frustration for me on the Switch.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so I was gonna go with a low seven, high six, so like a 6.8 or like a 7.0 or something like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because I liked the music, I liked the background. I thought the characters were kind of meh. I liked the story behind the characters, but not particularly the main storyline. Um, I liked the middling boss fights. I didn't like that the ending boss fights were cheesable. I also didn't like that I went to the cheesable method. Uh, but that's sort of more on me, I guess. Um, I think a lot of the depth from the game is hidden in kind of these synthesis things, and I don't or crafting things. I keep calling it synthesis because that's what it's called in the Tales series, and that's like the only game that I actually enjoy crafting in. So like there's a lot of aspects in this game that I think make it a really good game for certain people, but the crafting aspects and the kind of like farming aspects off the characters, that's not what I want in my Metroidvanias.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm. So so with my rating, I'm also going to bring up some things that I didn't touch on initially, but I'd honestly put it for me. I'd probably put it at an 8, even though I didn't look to complete it or anything like that. I'd still put it at a 8 for me. I really enjoyed it. Um, I think some of the things that, even though I didn't explore them, that the game has to offer for the genre is pretty fantastic. So the game, as we've mentioned but didn't really specify, the game has two like character stories, so you can play as Miriam or Zangetsu. So that's nice. Zangetsu's gameplay is a different style of fighting, but the story isn't really like different or anything like that. But the game also has other modes. It has like a boss rush mode, and also has a boss revenge mode, which is really fun. You can pick between 4 different bosses to play through a boss rush mode on,
Oh,
and then
I to touch on that point, I actually really enjoyed the boss revenge mode. I thought that was pretty cool.
yeah.
Uh, fighting Miriam in that mode, like how ridiculously OP she has when she has everything. Like I'm pretty sure when you fight Miriam, she has all of her shards and all of her like techniques and all of that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and she like switches between like weapons and stuff. The computer being able to do it, like I don't, there were shortcuts and stuff, but like pulling that off and learning that whole system was not like a thing I wanted to do. But watching the computer do it was really, really, really cool.
Yeah.
I really liked that section of the game, and it was like this hidden, like it wasn't hidden, but it's like this like extra mode thing in the side, and I didn't find it till like the very end. But
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I really liked the boss revenge mode. I thought that was neat.
Yeah, yeah. The game also includes something that is really fantastic for different kind of speedrunners. It has a randomizer mode and a speedrunner mode in it. Um, and it also has a classic mode. I didn't explore classic mode at all, so I'm not 100% sure what's in there, but it's got a lot of different modes. I
I looked at the classic mode.
mhm.
I keep cutting you off. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
I looked at the classic mode. The classic mode kind of puts you back in like an NES style Castlevania, and it
Hmm.
has its own kind of story. I didn't get too far into it because I didn't want to grind out NES controls and like slippage on platforms where you fall into water and insta die and respawn back at the start. Uh, but if you wanted to try like an old school like Castlevania type thing, I think there's a whole separate game in there, like designed NES style on that classic mode.
Yeah, yeah. So that's something I should probably actually check out. But so for the main mode itself, like I in I enjoyed the music for it. I enjoyed the different weapon systems, trying to get the different weapons out, finding what works best for you or what works best for the enemies that you're fighting. Even though I didn't really utilize a ton of it, near the end of it, I started using the techniques, and I thought that that was added a really nice change for pace for combat. So overall, I rated a solid 8. I think it's really good. I think it's a very solid entry for the genre. So yeah, I'd recommend it highly.
So I don't know if this is the right way of thinking, but I think I gave Shovel Knight like a 7. And there were aspects, and I know these are like two different games. Essentially, yeah, sure, they're kind of a platformer in a sense, but they're very different. So I don't know if I can really compare. But I think when I played this game versus Shovel Knight, I kind of enjoyed this game a little bit more, and I think that's just because I'm more of an RPG MMO guy. So if you throw some RPG elements in there, a little bit of grinding, a little bit of crafting, I mean, it hit a lot of like, I don't know if it's not like a nerve, but it hits a lot of familiarity that I really enjoy about gaming. So I think I'm gonna go one step higher, give it an 8. And like I said, Rob, I think you detailed that perfectly. All the game modes that this game has to offer. There's just a lot of content in this game. So if you really enjoy this game, like just the initial story, you're really going to enjoy a lot of the other aspects, most likely. And if you are a speedrunner, which I am not, or if you like those crazy like boss fights, I just think it's a really solid game overall. Uh, so other than that, any last words, guys? Anything else that maybe we didn't cover that you're like dying to say that we couldn't?
Um, More of a like a sidestep to this. But if this is a game that anyone's interested in, likes this style and hasn't maybe explored some more of the quote unquote classics in the entry, on I think pretty much everything. Just recently the Castlevania Advanced Collection was released that has the three Game Boy Advanced Castlevania games. I know it's available on Switch. I'm not sure if it's available on other stuff, but I know it came out on Switch at least. Highly recommend that. Only $20 gets you my favorite Castlevania games, but they're very solid entries. So I do recommend that if this kind of game interests you.
Cool, cool. George, what about you, man?
I think, and Rob touched on this in sort of his like review and rating. I didn't talk about the boss rush mode or the boss revenge mode as much as I thought I was going to. I usually love boss rush modes. I did not love this one's, and it's only because my Miriam in my main game was like level 75 by the time I finished it. And I had also beaten the optional Dracula boss. And when you beat him, you get to rent all the books from the library. So like my Miriam was stacked. When I went through the first boss rush mode, they were doing nothing to me. Like I could just wail on them, and they had gotten to the point where like the damage they were putting out was like doing ones.
Mm,
Uh, and even the second one, which is the later bosses of the game, it wasn't like until I fought the final like two bosses that there was any significant damage being done to me. So I thought that piece of the game could have been better balanced. Um, the boss revenge mode I thought was much better because the bosses when you're fighting like Zangetsu Miriam and the church girl,
Dominique?
uh, Dominique, yeah, that one is much better balanced because you have a set amount of health and you fight the three of them like back to back to back with I think only minor healing in between. I thought that was better balanced because they don't the bosses don't level. They're like you get this and you got to go through three people. Good luck. I thought that challenge was much more interesting than you know having a max level character kind of go through the boss. Like the bosses didn't balance themselves to your Miriam, right? They were the
Yeah.
level that you fight them at originally, which was kind of weird for a boss mode. Like the RPG aspect of there kind of messed up that mode for me.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's it. Other than that,
It's-
the bosses all have like similar techniques, kind of like your when you do the Zangetsu campaign, and that was neat. I think the one thing I didn't touch on was those techniques kind of make it feel like a little bit like an RPG slash Metroidvania slash Street Fighter game, which is super unique and pretty cool if you enjoy those three things put together. Uh, I don't play any Street Fighter, so the button commands were completely new to me, and that was neat learning it because I've always wanted to use like Ryu and Ken in Smash and never really been able to pull off their stuff. So like after I was done playing this game, I went and tried it and I pulled off some like Shoryukens and Tatsumakis and stuff, and I was like, oh, this is cool. I can do this now.
Yeah.
So I don't think we had touched on that earlier. How the techniques were like kind of like Street Fighter or Tekken based, where it's like down down right A or something like that. Like that stuff was new to me, and I did appreciate kind of learning that aspect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well,
I think the game brings a lot of different elements from like series and stuffs them all into one kind of game, and it that makes Bloodstained like really unique in that aspect. Um, which I think is really cool for an individual game series to bring all that together.
yeah, for real, man. I think it can touch a lot of different people. So if you're not into a Metrovania game and you are more into RPGs like myself, you might actually find some stuff in this game that, kind of holds your interest. So if might be a good game to dive into. Um, but yeah, I think that's gonna wrap it up, guys. Thank you guys so much for joining us. And any last words, anything you guys want to promote before we end the show?
Um, before I do that, I think we have to add a spoiler flag at the beginning of this.
Oh yes.
We got through the whole thing without mentioning the name of a boss until the very end there when we were talking about the boss rush mode. um, but yeah, no, I mean, nothing really. I've got my Twitter handle at Tenico Games. Still diddling around with the idea of doing streaming. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, other than that, I'll just nothing else for me to promote. Just listen to more of this podcast, guys.
Yes, yes. George, what about you, buddy?
I mean, I talk about my Smash thing in Phoenixville at Gamers Heaven, kind of on each of these. That exists. Otherwise, stay happy, stay healthy, and good luck, everyone.
Oh yeah. All right. See you later, guys. Thank you.
All right, bye.
Later.